Hey everybody, this is Brian with Seelbach, and today I'm going to talk to you about the process of how I go about tasting. So when I'm not doing stuff from Seelbach, I'm director of coffee at Quill's Coffee here in Louisville, Kentucky, where I taste, score, and evaluate coffees all the time. So I take a practice very similar to that when I'm approaching whiskeys. At the end of the day, the thing that I want to drill home to people is that there's not one right way to taste whiskey. I like to say that tasting is like developing your own language. The goal isn't necessarily to speak the same language as somebody else. It's to build your own vocabulary. And as you do that, and we learn when we get together with other people, we learn how to translate those languages or to bring those together into similarities, learning how to translate what we know and what someone else knows into common language. A lot of our tastes comes with experiences and memories from different flavors or flavor combinations. The biggest goal is to learn how you understand your language of flavor, and in time we'll learn how to translate that with other folks. A couple of quick suggestions though, as you're getting started. Try tasting things several times before you really figure out what you're noticing in a whiskey. Maybe try leaving it sit out for 10 minutes or so to open up in the glass before you start tasting. Try adding a couple of drops of water, just 2 will do, and see how that might change. Sometimes it's for the better, sometimes it's for the worse. And at the end of the day, be consistent with yourself. That's all that I ask. We're not necessarily going for accuracy right now. We're going for precision. We want to make sure that we hit the same things each time. So let's refer to our spider graph real quick. And what I like to say is a good way of learning is by comparison tasting. We put together a spider graph on the website that has 6 common flavor sectors that you might run into in whiskeys that you find here on the website. Sometimes it's difficult for people to discern the differences between them, and we're not talking about all the minute details of them right now. We're just talking on maybe a scale of 0 to 5. What is the intensity that you find in them? And so these comparison tastings are ways that we can dig into those and really start to see how we notice flavors like that. Let's go ahead and start with a few of them. I'm going to start with the Blue Note Juke Joint. This is the 5 BBL barrel, and we're going to end up comparing it to the Seelbach 15. Now, what we want to identify or look for here are notes of grain and notes of oak. You can use the spider graph to note things and their intensity or what you pick up on the nose or the palate, any of which, and you can put notes on them, kind of write those things down. All those things are helpful. And I'll indicate my spider graphs here, but really, when it comes to this Blue Note, while we get cherry and baked apple, graham cracker and vanilla, some snickerdoodle cookie coming in there, what we really notice is that there's a little bit more amplified kind of sweet bread or grainy notes. And while there is a little bit of toasted wood, the oak is not the dominating note in this particular glass. Let's compare that next with the Seelbach 15. It tames down the fruits a little bit, still has a lot of sweetness and spice, but you'll notice that I don't really notice much herbal or graininess to this pour. However, there is a lot of heavily toasted oak as well as tobacco notes. So the oak is going to be very high on the spider graph, and that grain note is going to be a lot lower. Let's talk about one more very extreme comparison. We are going to dive into the Pursuit United bourbon, and we're going to compare that to the Stellum Rye Fibonacci number 1. This United has a lot of orange, kind of orange oils or orange peel on the nose, but once we dive into the palate, tons of brown sugar, tons of cola-like notes and vanilla. Then it's complemented with some black pepper and cinnamon notes. There's a little bit of grain in there and as well a little bit of oak, but again, not so much, if any, of the herbal notes. But diving back into the Stellum Rye, so a different category entirely, the sweetness stays the same. The fruit actually picks up a little bit. The oak comes down, but what we notice is that there's a ton more spice and a ton more herbal characteristics. Black pepper, clove, lots of dill, lots of mint, but it's accompanied by this kind of maple sweetness and kind of a lavender-like note that sticks out in the fruit and floral category. These are just a couple ways that you all can use the spider graph while you're comparing other flavors. And this is by no means the end-all, be-all way to describe whiskey, but as you're getting started, it's a good way to start understanding how you note certain pockets of flavor in the whiskeys that you're picking up. In a later time, we'll dive into a bigger video that talks specifically about the nose, about body and mouthfeel, about flavor, finish, and complexities that we have in whiskeys, kind of the core identifiers that I like to look for when describing or tasting through a whiskey. That's a little bit of how we use the spider graph here, and that's a little bit about how I like to look at taste when it comes to whiskeys. Thanks to everybody, and we'll see you all soon.